Hello, everybody. Thanks for being on with us today. I'm Katie Earle, and I'm from Erie County Senior Services, and we're here with Jennifer Johnson, and super excited for this presentation with her on the retirement transition. Quick shout out to our sponsors, my Department of Senior Services, Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans for all their support. And don't forget to reach out to us if you need anything or if you're looking for something to do. We're at 858-8526 and we'll help you however we can. We are in meetings today, so feel free to show your video of yourself if you want to. No pressure though. Just click start video or stop video. It's up to you. Everyone is muted right now, so we'll chat with you through the chat, which you'll find at the lower right-hand side of your screen. And at the end, if we have enough time, we'll be able to unmute and share our ideas and questions. So with that, Jennifer, I will turn it over and you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jennifer Johnson. I am the owner of New Sky Coaching, and New Sky Coaching works with adults over age 50 on different types of coaching services. So I do some wellness coaching for people who are looking to improve their nutrition or lose weight or change some unhealthy habits. I work with people on retirement coaching, which we'll be talking a great deal about retirement today. And I also work with people on training for run training, as well as private yoga and small group yoga. But today we're going to be talking about retirement, and I have spent more than 20 years now working with older adults in various roles. And I see a lot of people retiring, either already retired or kind of moving into that period of life. And it can be a really scary time. I really like using the word transition because it really is a change from one period of life to another, and people can really feel sort of lost. So we're going to delve into that a little bit today. So, retirement. Yes, you have worked 30, 40 years, and now you're so excited. There's going to be no more commuting and no more meetings that should have been emails, no more Outlook calendars and 9 to 5s. It's going to be wonderful. You are going to play all the golf, and you are going to indulge your hobbies, and you're going to volunteer, and you're going to travel. It's going to be wonderful. But the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to sleep in. You are going to sleep in every day, and it will be so wonderful. And this is what we think of when we think about retirement. We think of it as a happy, joyful, liberating time of life where we're going to do all of these amazing things that we never had the time to do. It's going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, the reality looks a little bit more like this. Maybe a lot of caregiving, because now you have all this free time where suddenly you're spending time taking care of a friend or a family member who is ill. Maybe you are babysitting. Maybe you are babysitting every day, and you have traded your, career for now this childcare role. Maybe you have a really, really full calendar. I have so many people who tell me that they are busier in retirement than they ever were when they were working. Or maybe you have the opposite problem and you have nothing on your calendar. And that those wide open days don't provide you with any sense of accomplishment. Maybe you find yourself doing a lot more sleeping because you don't have anything to do. Maybe you've got that wide open calendar. And so before you know it, you're logging a 3-hour nap every afternoon. Or if you're like my dad, you sit down in front of the TV and you never get up again. That's also another really common thing that I see with people. I always like to share the story of my dad because my dad worked very hard. My dad worked for the county, and my dad had a very physical manual labor sort of job. And he worked his entire adult life at that job. And because he worked for the county, he could retire when he was 55. And he did. The very first day he was eligible for retirement, he took it. He retired, he came home, he sat down on the couch, and he never got up again. And that was about 20 years ago. So he's still sitting in front of the TV. The only difference is that now he's sitting in front of the TV in a very expensive assisted living facility where he doesn't do anything. He doesn't take advantage of any of the wonderful programs or activities or socializing that he could be doing. He's still sitting in front of the TV. And for a lot of people, these images here are what retirement ends up looking like. We end up taking on different responsibilities that are maybe a little bit less fulfilling, or maybe aren't quite what you had in mind, and maybe some of your goals and desires for what your retirement was going to look like maybe change a little bit. Or else sometimes we feel kind of lost without that set schedule, and without those goals and those tasks to accomplish every day. We kind of lose focus and we lose any sort of drive. So the truth is that retirement is a life transition. We all have those. We have tons of them throughout our lives. But the difference for retirement, as opposed to some of those other life transitions, most of those other life transitions come with help. When we transition from high school to college, we have guidance counselors, and we have parents, and we have college coaches, and we have peer mentors that help us make that transition from high school to college. When we get married, right? Some people even go through pre-marriage counseling. Maybe you go through a pre-cana or a pre-marriage class. Parenting, you take classes, you take childbirth classes, and you take parenting classes, and you have your own parents helping you get through that difficult life transition. When you change jobs, you start a new job, sometimes you're assigned a mentor or someone who helps you onboard. You have a boss or a manager who trains you and teaches you what to do. If you are getting divorced, or you're experiencing the death of a loved one, we have family support, we have support groups, there's even counseling. There's all different kinds of help and support available to us as we navigate some of these other life transitions. But for the most part, when we retire, maybe somebody throws us a party and we're supposed to be super happy, but there's no classes that teach us how to be retired. When we talk about retirement planning focuses almost exclusively on money. I taught a class yesterday in conjunction with a financial planning company that I work with sometimes, and they were talking about investing for retirement, saving for retirement. All they were talking about was money, though. So that's great. Certainly you need to make sure that your finances are in order. You need to make sure that you're saving throughout your career, to make sure that you have the kind of replacement income that you need in order to live the life that you want to live during retirement. But once you've done that, now how do you spend your time? Where will you find that fulfillment and activity and sense of accomplishment that a lot of us find in our day-to-day work? No two ways about it. Life transitions are stressful. Even the ones that we equate with positive experiences, like starting a family or like getting married, they still cause us stress. We're still navigating these new skills that we need to learn, these new feelings that we're experiencing, these changes to our identity as we move through some of those other life transitions. But retirement is a particularly stressful time for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're supposed to be happy. Everyone's telling us how happy we're supposed to be. We don't have to get up every morning anymore. We don't have to get up and go to work. We don't have to fight traffic. We don't have to get dressed up every day. We get to skip all of those things and we get to simply enjoy ourselves. So with everybody telling us how happy we're supposed to be, sometimes we almost feel a little bad about some of the feelings that we are experiencing. We feel guilty for feeling sad or bored. People feel isolated. If a lot of your social activity and your daily interaction with people came from your job, then being at home and not interacting with people all day long can feel a little bit isolating. And for many people, that can lead to depression. We also very frequently encounter the fact that if you're married or you have a partner, maybe you've retired, but they haven't. So maybe they're still going to work every day, and you had anticipated retirement being the two of you, but at least for right now, maybe it's just you. And so that can feel isolating and lonely as well. The other issue with retirement is that retirement specifically is a stage of life that interacts with many other life changes. So when we retire, most of us are in our 60s or maybe even our 70s. Some people retire in their 50s, but that chunk of our lives also has a lot of other things going on. We have our own parents getting older, so maybe they need more care. And caregiving on its own is a full-time job. We also have, if you have kids, maybe those grown kids are starting to move out, go away, starting to leave. And so now maybe we have an empty nest kind of thing going on. Now, in addition to not having the work of your job to do all day long, you also don't have that home and family work to do anymore. And that can be sad and isolating in its own way. In addition, that period of our lives also coincides with health changes for ourselves. As we begin to age, we start to see some of those changes that maybe don't allow us to do some of the things that we had anticipated we'd be doing in retirement. I always remember my own grandparents when I was younger. My grandmother did not work outside the home, but my grandfather, when he retired, I remember I was about 13 years old, and I remember him coming home when he had formally retired from his 9-to-5 job. I remember him coming home with a box, with all his stuff. And I remember him sitting down on the couch and saying to my grandmother, "Well, I'm retired now. What are we going to do? We always said we were going to travel. Let's travel. Where do you want to go? Let's go to Europe." And my grandmother saying, "Too old for that. I can't do that. I can't walk around like that." So as we get older, sometimes some of those things we had always anticipated doing during retirement, by the time we get there, we feel like, oh, well, I guess I don't really want to or can't really do those things anymore. And so that vision that we had for retirement has to change as well. So I wanted to spend a few minutes going through the stages of retirement. And if you look this up later, you may find some different ideas. So there's 5 kind of generally accepted stages of retirement, but sometimes they're categorized in 4 different stages, sometimes as many as 6 or 7. So it really depends on what source you're looking at. But this is the theory that I like with the 5 stages here. So the 5 stages of retirement, we're going to go through each one individually. We start with pre-retirement, which is, of course, exactly what it sounds like. Full retirement, so kind of starting at day 1, after you retire, that next day. Disenchantment, which we'll spend a lot of time on. Reorientation, and then reconciliation. So let's start with pre-retirement. Pre-retirement can start as much as 10 or 15 years before you retire. But it really gets into its stride about 2 years before you formally retire. Um, Ideally, when you're doing your pre-retirement planning, you want to start early and you want to keep it going. Um, Ideally, 10 or 15 years before retirement, you and your partner, if you have one, you're talking about what sort of things you might want to do. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to, you want to downsize. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to take up a new hobby or pick up an old one. Maybe you want to babysit and spend more time with kids and family. So you want to talk about these different ideas and really keep that conversation going. And the idea that you're really trying to come up with here is, what's your vision for retirement? When you're visualizing what that 20, 30, as much as 30 some years of your life might look like, what do you see? What do you picture when you think about that? And I really like the idea of keeping a journal or a bucket list. Some people might use something like a vision board, which is, if that's not something you've ever done before, it can be something like a bulletin board or even a poster board that hang on the wall, and you can add pictures and post-it notes and things to it. And it's kind of a living, breathing document that you keep adding things to as you find new ideas. So keeping that list in whatever format you use can be really helpful as you move through those last 10 or 15 years before retirement, visualizing what that might look like. And if you do have a partner, I really like the vision board idea because it allows both of you to add things and change things. It isn't a document or something that belongs to just one of you. It's something that the two of you can share. In this stage also, it's really important to start having some hard conversations. Certainly with your partner, do you both share the same vision for your retirement? Hopefully you do, because hopefully you've been talking about it and having those conversations and visualizing together, but maybe you don't. We all know couples where one person is very active and outgoing and maybe wants to spend time in retirement traveling or downsizing to a retirement community where there's lots of people around and there's lots of activity going on, where the other person is maybe more introverted, more stay at home, and maybe they don't want to do those more active pursuits in retirement. So really having those conversations with your partner about what you imagine your retirement life together is going to look like. It's not uncommon in retirement for couples to divorce because their views are so different. And once they start spending a lot of time together in retirement, they find that their personalities aren't meshing anymore. So it's really important to have those early and ongoing conversations with your partner. Something else to keep in mind is if your partner is a different age or at a different stage of their career than you are, you may not be retiring at the same time. And so what will retirement look like for you while your partner is still working? It's important to have hard conversations with your kids as well. Do your kids expect that you are going to be around? Are you going to be around for help, to assist with their lives and with babysitting and with helping them in their careers or caring for their homes? Are you going to be there providing support for them? Or, do you intend to travel or downsize or not make yourself available in those ways? Whatever your choices are, that's all okay, but it's important to set those expectations early. Conversations with your parents. So if you have aging or elderly parents or parents who need care and support, that's something to think about too. Will you be called upon for caregiving, for transportation, for managing their homes or their legal and financial issues? what's that expectation going to be like? And going along with that, conversations with your siblings. How will you share those roles if you do have aging parents to care for? It's not uncommon for one sibling to end up doing all the work caring for the parents. And so making sure that those responsibilities are shared so that you can each spend your retirement time doing things that you enjoy while still fulfilling any responsibilities that you might have. Have backup plans. So how will you handle change? Just like every other time of our lives, the way we visualize retirement may not be exactly the way it turns out to be. I knew a couple who, when they retired, they moved to Arizona to be with their kids. All of their kids, they had 3 kids, all of their kids had moved to Arizona at different times over their adult lives. They had grandkids in Arizona and they wanted to be with their families. So they uprooted themselves from Buffalo, moved to Arizona, and within 5 years, just enough time for them to buy a house, get involved in their community, find a church they liked, find social activities and friends. Within that 5-year period, one of their kids moved to California. Another one of their kids got divorced and moved away, taking the grandkids with them. So now they were stuck in this town that they had moved to be with their kids, but now their kids weren't there. So now what were their choices? Do they stay? Do they move again? And if they move, where do they go? Because now their kids are in different places. So think about how you might handle experiences like that and changes like that. Obviously, we can't plan for every eventuality, but if you are going to make major changes to your life in retirement, think about how you might navigate the future changes that could take place. And then reevaluate periodically. Again, ideally, you're doing this early. So ideally, you have lots of time to talk about it, think about what some of these things might look like, and then reevaluate as maybe you come up with new ideas or you find new information in your research or your discussions, and kind of keep that journal or bucket list or vision board updated as you gather new information. Full retirement, or what I like to call day one. You've cleaned out your desk or your locker or shut down your business or whatever it is. Maybe you had a nice party. Now the next day, okay? That's where full retirement starts. Day one, it's okay to sleep in. Sometimes this is also called the honeymoon stage of retirement. Remember that all honeymoons end, but it is perfectly fine to give yourself some time to enjoy this stage. It is okay for a while to have no schedule. It's okay to take a vacation. It's okay to get up and play golf every morning. Whatever it is that you want to do, it's okay to give yourself at least, for a lot of people, I would say at least 6 months in this stage where you have no specific plans, nothing major to do, enjoying yourself, maybe traveling a bit, and taking that time to relax. This is what you worked for. This is what you were waiting for. It really is okay to take some time to enjoy this period. For most people, this honeymoon stage kind of ends or starts to feel unfulfilling about 6 months to a year into full retirement. And that's when we move on to the next stage, disenchantment. Disenchantment is when we start feeling like maybe retirement isn't all it's cracked up to be. We start to maybe feel a little bit bored. We start feeling a little isolated or lonely. Maybe we're not enjoying this period as much as we were at the beginning. And there is frequently a sense of disillusionment. I was supposed to be happy because retirement is supposed to be a wonderful thing. And sometimes we feel like if retirement is supposed to be a wonderful thing, but I'm not happy, there must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Many, many people feel this way in retirement because we're going from a very structured period of our lives to a very unstructured period of our lives. And that can be very disorienting. And in this stage too is where sometimes people start to feel like retirement is going in the wrong direction. Maybe they're not doing some of those things that they had anticipated doing, but they're not quite sure why. They don't know what's holding them back. And in this stage too is where people start to feel a loss of identity. That's what we're going to talk about next. But I hear this from people a lot, this idea that if I am no longer a nurse, teacher, construction worker, machinist, accountant, lawyer, if I am no longer a blank, then who am I? So we're still talking about disenchantment here, but I wanted to spend a few minutes focusing on this loss of identity that so many people feel that 6 months or so or a year into retirement. The problem is that here, especially in the US, we usually equate a person's identity with their career. So if you meet someone at a party, you usually say to them, "What do you do?" Or like me, I'm a middle-aged mom. Lots of people will say to me, "Do you work?" Okay. When you ask someone, "What do you do?" you mean, what do you work at all day and get paid for? Okay. So we identify a person by their career. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, I'm a musician. And that's how we identify ourselves and others. And so once we set that career aside, sometimes it's hard to remember who we are. And for the first few months of retirement, I noticed people will say, "Oh, I used to be a teacher, but now I'm retired." Or people will just say, "Oh, well, I'm retired now." And then someone will say, "What did you do when you worked?" Because that's our identity. That's how we present ourselves to the world. I'm a teacher, I'm a whatever. In addition, with a lighter schedule or no schedule at all and fewer daily responsibilities, it can be really easy to feel a loss of purpose. For many of us, our career is our purpose. That was our goal in life, to be a whatever. And now we've done that thing. And so we feel kind of that loss of purpose in our lives. In addition, now because we feel like we're lacking that identity, it's really easy to have a new identity thrust upon you, and maybe one you don't particularly want, like caregiver or babysitter, or like my dad, couch potato. Family members might see you as free to help them out. I hear all the time from people, "Oh, my kids say to me, 'Well, you don't have anything else to do. You can babysit.'" Well, just because you don't have a set schedule and a job to get up for every morning, it doesn't mean you don't have anything to do. But again, that guilt that we sometimes feel surrounding retirement does cause us to take on some of those identities and some of those responsibilities and tasks that we maybe wouldn't have volunteered for. If you're the only one among your siblings who's retired, it's easy for your siblings to say, "Well, you can take care of mom and dad. You don't have anything to do." So it's easy to fall into some new identity that you don't particularly care for. Okay. So now, as we've kind of grappled with disenchantment here a little bit, hopefully, as people make their way through that stage of retirement, we come out the other side to what's called reorientation. And disenchantment can be a phase that's really easy to get stuck in. And for some people, it does lead to depression and anxiety. Hopefully, for most of us, we come out the other side into this new world of reorientation. And reorientation is exactly what it sounds like. Kind of looking around and saying, hey, I'm not really happy with where I am. Maybe I could find something new. And this is where we start creating that new identity. Okay, maybe I'm no longer a teacher. So what am I going to be now? What is my next identity going to be? And I like to equate this with, it's very similar to a high school senior going off to college, right? A lot of people feel that when you're going off to college, especially if you're going away someplace, someplace where your family doesn't live, you feel like I can create a new identity. I can be whoever I want because I'm no longer stuck. I'm no longer pigeonholed in this role, with my family in my hometown. We can do that in retirement too. I'm not my career anymore. Now I can be whatever I want to be. And that can be very freeing and very liberating. So creating that new identity, realigning with your values. I talk a lot about values with people when we talk about when I do retirement coaching and we talk about what their goals are for retirement. It's easy in those months following retirement to get sidetracked from your values. And for a lot of people, if I say to them, well, what are your values? They'll say, oh, well, my family and, my spiritual life. That's great. And those things are very, very important. But when I think about values, I think about things a little bit more, a little looser. What are some of the characteristics that you value in yourself and in others? So a little bit less about things like people, and more about things like freedom and friendship and kindness and generosity, community. Are you a person who values creativity? Are you a person who values challenge? Are you a person who values autonomy? And so we talk about that a little bit. I actually ask people to, I write out a bunch of different words on index cards, and I ask people to look at those cards and pick out the ones that speak to them, that matter to them, that they would identify as their values, the characteristics that are important to them. And so then thinking about, am I living my life in a way that is consistent with my values? And if I'm not, what's holding me back? So spending a little bit of time thinking about those things. Am I living the life I want to be living? Am I prioritizing the things that I care about? And then finding your purpose. So purpose, I like to define as the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. So what is it that you get up every day to do? And for most of us, for most of our lives, our purpose is our job, or it's your family, right? You get out of bed in the morning because you have a teenager shaking you awake to drive him to school. But when we aren't doing those things anymore on a day-to-day basis, now what's going to get you out of bed? What's your purpose? And finding that purpose helps people create that new identity by turning the focus onto what's important to them. And then finally, stage 5 is reconciliation. So reconciliation is not just about finding your identity, it's about feeling comfortable in it, about really being able to spread out and take up space in that new identity that you've created, to really embody this new person that you are and this new identity that you have, finding stability, finding fulfillment, and really being able to feel like this new period of your life in retirement is who you are now. I used to be a teacher, but now I'm this thing, whatever this new identity is for you. So, how do we avoid disenchantment? Ideally, if I'm working with someone, I start working with them about 2 years prior to retirement because that's really that sweet spot of pre-retirement where we can really start nailing down what some of those values and goals are for retirement. But maybe you're already there. Maybe you're here today because you're already retired and you're thinking, yes, I am smack dab in the middle of disenchantment. How do I get out? So some things that I recommend for avoiding that disenchantment stage or getting through it as quickly as possible are use that bucket list. So, or your vision board or your journal. Now you've done that, right? Hopefully. And if you haven't done it yet, you can still. It's never too late to do that. So even if you're already retired, you can certainly make that list or set up that board that helps you direct your goals a little bit more. But use that bucket list to set your goals. Okay, so I always said that when I retired, I was going to travel. Okay, so now take that and let's set some short-term and long-term goals surrounding that particular vision. Create a schedule, but be flexible. One of the things that people value most in retirement is freedom. Their freedom to not be tied to a daily schedule of having to be at the office or wherever at a certain time, and being able to have that flexibility to make changes and do things that they enjoy as they come up. But a schedule does help us get out of bed in the morning. It helps us remember to eat healthy meals at particular times of the day. A regular schedule helps us to stay active and fit in our activity and exercise. A regular schedule helps us to plan social activities, and it helps us to handle whatever responsibilities we may have in terms of family and home and community. So I encourage people to consider a weekly rather than daily schedule. So instead of, I'm going to get up at 6:30 and I'm going to do this thing and then I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do this thing and instead of having that set schedule, instead looking at it from a more a higher level sort of view and saying, okay, I'm going to sit down on Sunday and kind of sketch out my schedule for the week. I know that I know that I'm going to go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then on Tuesday, I can get some stuff done around the house. Maybe I need to mow the lawn. Maybe I need to weed the garden. Then on Thursday, I have this social activity planned. I'm going to go to lunch, or I'm going to play golf. I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to play pickleball, whatever it is. But instead of looking at it on a day-to-day basis, thinking about what you're going to try to accomplish in the course of a week. That gives you a little bit more flexibility to say, hey, I really want to, I really want to get those plants in the ground. I want to get that done sometime this week. Then when you've got a chunk of time on Monday afternoon after you go to the gym, oh, now I've got time to do it. So looking at it from a slightly higher level perspective, a weekly rather than a daily schedule. Alternate periods of activity with periods of free time. And again, I'm talking about this on a larger scale basis. So maybe you have a period of a month or two where you're very busy. Maybe, okay, so now it's June. Kids are just getting out of school. Maybe you promised, maybe you promised your kids you were going to babysit in this chunk of time between when the kids get out of school and between when their summer camp starts. Okay, so you've got a month or so where you're going to be super busy, you're going to be babysitting, you're going to be doing things. It's a really busy time. If you've got a garden, you're trying to get all of that stuff in the ground. That's a very active time. Maybe you're going to travel. So now you're going to go on a couple of trips within a short chunk of time, whatever the reason is. Maybe you've got a lot of stuff planned for a chunk of time, a 2-month chunk of time or so. Okay, then after that 2-month chunk of time is over, you take another month where you've got more free time. Now I don't have any trips planned. Now I'm not babysitting several times a week. Now the garden's in a good place where I don't need to be out there, for hours every day doing the work. Now I have this unstructured free time where I can feel a little bit more loose, and I don't have to have such a structured daily or weekly schedule. So in the larger scheme of things, having busy periods followed by freer, looser periods of time. That's another way to help us avoid disenchantment, because we don't get bored. We have busy periods and then we have freer periods. Try new things or revisit old hobbies. This is one of the most common goals that I talk to for people in retirement. People want to try new activities that maybe they didn't have time to do while they were working. I want to take up photography. I want to write my novel. I want to start a garden. I want to hike, whatever it is. Or I want to pick up things that I put down 20 years ago because I didn't have the time. I want to relearn how to knit. I want to volunteer more. I want to do some of these things that I used to enjoy doing because I didn't have time to do them while I was working and raising my family. So thinking about what some of those things are, and again, ideally, those are on your vision board or your bucket list. So I want to spend the last part of our time together today talking about goal setting. And if you ever spent any time working with goals or metrics in your career, you're probably familiar with the concept of SMART goals. SMART is an acronym that is used that people use for goal setting purposes, but I have a different acronym that I like to use. It's super SMART. So not just smart, but being super smart. So we'll go through what each of those letters stands for. Goals are really important because goals provide direction and help guide our actions. So in your career, you probably had goals to meet, right? You probably had goals or metrics that guided your daily work and your tasks, and that you were judged on. Your performance was judged on. Well, when we walk away from that, when we step away from that, it's hard to find sometimes a sense of accomplishment because we don't have anything to measure. How do we measure our happiness or our satisfaction without clear goals and metrics? So setting goals, even in non-work aspects of our lives, can be really, really helpful because goal setting has a really powerful effect on our behavior. When we have a clear goal to meet, we generally want to do it and we feel motivated to accomplish it. Clarity is essential, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we dive into the letters of the super smart goals here. Clarity is essential because if your goals aren't clear, how will you know when you've accomplished them? In order to feel that sense of accomplishment that we're looking for, we need to know when we've achieved the thing. So clarity is incredibly important. Also, goals that aren't clear allow for loopholes. And humans love loopholes. So if there is a way, if our goal is not clear enough, we will find a way to get out of it. So goal setting is great for us and it really drives our behavior, but also we're also kind of designed to try to do things as easily as possible. So if there's a loophole there, your brain will try to find a way to slip through it. So super smart goals, so we don't use the U and the E, but super smart goals stands for self-controllable, public, reward, specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time specific. So we're going to go through each of these individually, and then at the end, I'm going to show you what goal setting using this formula would look like. Self-controllable. So this is incredibly important. Do you have control over all the factors that would allow you to reach this goal that you want to set? If you don't, then you can still work on the goal, but you might need to modify it to make it more realistic. So an example here would be if your goal is to travel more in retirement, but your partner is still working, you don't have control over your partner's ability to travel with you. So you could still take steps towards that goal. You could travel alone. You could travel with friends and family members other than your partner. You could travel when your partner is available to travel during vacations and times off. You could make plans to travel that would take place after your partner has retired. So you can still work on that goal, but you don't have control over all the factors that are going to allow you to reach that goal. Public. Making your goals public does not have to mean putting them out on Facebook for everybody to see. Public can be something as simple as sharing your goal with one or two supportive people. When we tell someone about our goals and the things we want to accomplish, we start to feel that those people are invested in our goals, and we don't want to disappoint them. We have that kind of natural human instinct to not disappoint others. So when we share that with other people, it makes us a little bit more accountable. You also want to make your goals public to yourself too. So for example, if your goal is to exercise more, then add those exercise classes or chunks of time to your calendar or to your date book, or set a reminder on your phone. In that way, you're making them public for yourself as well. It's not just a vague promise to get more exercise. Reward. Well-planned rewards can be very, very motivating. Rewards don't have to be monetary. They don't have to be spending money on something. But it is helpful if the rewards are linked to your goals. So for example, if your goal is to exercise more, then maybe your reward is something like a new pair of walking or running shoes. Maybe it's a new workout outfit. Maybe it's a session with a personal trainer. Whatever it is, if your reward is linked to your goal, it promotes, it helps to promote your goal more. Remember that rewards should promote goal attainment, not detract from it. So if you have a goal to lose weight, and when you get to, a 5-pound weight loss and you decide to reward yourself, your reward should not be a hot fudge sundae. Rewards should help you on the path to achieving your goal, not take away from any strides that you've made. Specific, okay? Be as detailed as possible in describing your goal. This is where the loopholes come in. If we leave ourselves a loophole, we're more likely to take it. So don't leave yourself any loopholes. If your retirement goal is to run a marathon, if that's on your bucket list, your goal should not be, I will run a marathon. Your goal should be, I will train for and run the Buffalo Marathon on May 28th, 2023, or whatever race it is that you have in mind. Be as detailed as possible. Measurable. How will you measure your progress? How will you know when you've achieved your goal? So when you're considering how you'll measure progress, make sure to consider both objective results, so things that you can see or touch or track in some way. So if you're running, then maybe you measure your progress in miles. If you're writing, maybe you measure your progress in pages or chapters. If you're cleaning out the basement or you're cleaning out the attic, maybe you measure your progress in boxes, how many boxes you've emptied. But also consider subjective results, how you feel, changes in your behavior, actions that you're starting to take. If your goal is around health, then maybe part of your progress is how do I feel? Do I feel healthier? Do I feel calmer? Do I feel more comfortable? Do I feel do I feel better about myself? So consider both of those types of results. They're both important, and some goals can't be measured objectively. They can only be measured through feelings and behaviors and actions. Your goal should be adjustable. So life happens. And so our goals need to be flexible. You know, if you have a goal, if your goal involves cleaning out the basement, maybe you're downsizing, you're cleaning out the basement, but now all of a sudden you had you had plans to work on that, but a tree fell down in your backyard and now you've got to deal with that. Well, now you might have to adjust your goal a little bit. So having a backup plan is really important. So something like if the goal that you're working on is regarding meditation or mindfulness, for example, maybe if your goal is something like, I will meditate for 20 minutes each morning when I get up, but having a backup plan of, well, if I oversleep or if I have to rush out of the house for some reason, then I'll change that time and I'll meditate after dinner. Goals should be realistic. So going back to the marathon example, if you want to run a marathon, that's a fantastic goal. That's an amazing thing to want to accomplish in your life. But if you've never even run a 5K race, it might not be very realistic. So your goal should be challenging, but it should be something that you could be reasonably confident of doing if you put in the time and effort. So consider the barriers, consider the obstacles, and then consider how confident you are in your ability to accomplish this goal. If you had a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can accomplish this goal? I like for you to be at least a 7 out of 10. 7 means it's challenging, because if it wasn't challenging, if you were positive you could do it, you'd be at a 10. So it's challenging, but you still feel pretty good about it. If you're anything less than a 7 out of 10, I'd encourage you to go back and rework your goal. Make it a little bit less challenging. Make it something that you're a little bit more confident about being able to achieve. When we're talking about goal setting, confidence is so important. If you don't believe that you can accomplish a goal, you're not even going to try. So it's really important to have that confidence in your ability to achieve whatever it is. So with the marathon example, maybe we don't throw that goal out altogether, but instead we say, my goal is going to be to run a 10K race. So now I can work up to that a little bit. If I'm running, a mile or two, now I can work up to a 5K race and then continue to train for that 10K race, ultimately leading to the marathon goal. Maybe that's a longer term goal. That's a year or two down the road. And last, goals need to be time specific. When do you want to achieve your goal? What's the deadline? Okay. How will you know when your time is up? So what's the deadline for achieving that goal? Another option is, instead of setting a final deadline where you've accomplished your goal or not, another option is to set a deadline to review and revise as needed. So for example, if you want to write, then maybe your first goal is to write an outline for the book or the piece that you want to write. And then once you've accomplished that, then you review. So instead of setting a deadline to complete it, you set a deadline to review it and then now revise and go into the next draft. All right, so here's an example using those terms. So a super smart example, self-controllable. All right, so here we go. My goal is to travel. I have sufficient savings and income to do so, right? So that's something I have control over. And I have no major home or family responsibilities. So if I am a single person with adequate income and I have no major responsibilities that prevent me from traveling, those things are under my control. My goal, I'm able to accomplish this goal because I'm in control of the factors that would be involved. Public. I will tell people, I will tell my children, and I will tell a few close friends that I plan to travel. That makes me accountable because someone is likely to follow up with me at some point and say, hey, how's that going? Reward. When I schedule my first trip, I will purchase a new suitcase. Specific. So here's where our loopholes come in. My goal is to schedule and travel on 2 major trips before the end of 2023. So I have a deadline. Now, here's my loophole, or how I've eliminated my loophole. What does major mean? Major is defined as trips of 1 week or longer. Okay, so now I've clearly defined what my goal is. I've eliminated any loopholes, and I've set a clear end date. Measurable. How am I going to measure my progress? So I'll measure my progress in the following ways. Each week for 1 month, I will research 2 possible options for travel. For example, 1 week, I will visit the website of a tour company and research the trips scheduled through the Aurora Senior Center. I apologize to anyone who does not frequent the Aurora Senior Center. It's one that I'm very familiar with, and I happen to know they go on fantastic trips. So that's why I used that. So then our next measurable bullet point here, I have 5 friends and family members who travel frequently. Each week, I will email one of them and ask for recommendations. And by September 30th, I will have scheduled and paid deposits for 2 trips. So I have set out how I'm going to measure my progress. What am I going to do? When am I going to do it? How will I know when it's done? Adjustable. If I have not found 2 major trips that interest me, okay, that's a possibility, right? You might do all this research and you might find, well, I'm not interested in any of this stuff. This doesn't appeal to me. So if I haven't found those by September 30th, when my first deadline has approached, I can extend my deadline to December 31st. So I can give myself more time to do more research. Or I may also substitute shorter trips that are more appealing. So if I can't find 2 major trips to go on by my deadline, here's what I could do instead. Realistic. So why is my goal realistic? I have the support of my friends and family members. I have the financial resources to travel. I will travel with a tour or group so that I feel safe and organized. And I have allowed adequate time for research and built-in alternatives. I feel good about my goal. It's realistic. I've examined the barriers and the obstacles, and I feel confident in my ability to accomplish this goal. And last, time specific. I will begin my research on June 13th. By September 30th, if I have not committed to 2 major trips, I will reevaluate and determine whether to push back my deadline or commit to shorter trips. So using this super smart system, you can set goals for accomplishing just about anything. You can use this for health goals like weight loss or changing your eating habits. You can use it for household related goals like cleaning out the basement, like downsizing by packing and getting rid of things. You can use it for downsizing in terms of things like researching different smaller communities to live in. You can use this for other sorts of goals that you might have set for retirement. Things like writing, things like traveling, crossing things off that bucket list or vision board. All right, to sum up, oh dear, I always go the full hour, don't I? To sum up, retirement is a very exciting part of life, but it's unknown and that can be scary. Whenever we're trying something new, whenever we're doing something for the first time, moving into a new phase of life, it's scary. It can be scary to start something new. Planning ahead can make it easier, and goal setting can help you find a sense of accomplishment and purpose. And I'll just share with you while we're wrapping up here my contact information. If anyone has any questions, my website is on here, my email is on here, and you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at New Sky Coaching.
Thank you, Jennifer. And because we have a couple people calling in, would you just mind reading your phone number, email, and website, please?
Oh, sure. My phone number is 716-281-8512. I am right here in Western New York. My email address is Jennifer with 2 N's at New Sky Coaching, WNY.com. And my website is newskycoachingwny.com.
Thank you so much. That was a really wonderful,
Thank you.
real, and digestible presentation. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We are at 11:30 right now. I want to be mindful. Do you have a couple minutes for questions and
I
comments?
do. Sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, everybody, feel free to put your ideas in. Let's see. So we've got, does the speaker sell a book?
Oh my goodness. No, perhaps I'll have to set a super smart goal to write a book.
Aha,
But thank
no
you.
rush. That's very flattering. They just sent a smiley face.
Oh, thank you so much. I do write a blog. So I do blog on my website at newskycoachingwny.com.
Okay, awesome. So we've got somebody that's wondering, are curious, are you still with Highmark now or freelance? Thanks for helpful
Oh.
presentation.
Yes, I am. So I am still doing that. I'm doing both things.
Yes. This is, you've given me so much information to think about. I'm going to start writing super smart goals from here on out,
Oh, yay.
which I have to agree with that. The way you broke it down was just so clear. It
Oh,
was
thank
really neat.
you. Thank you.
Seeing this is awesome. Thank you. And really looking forward to this presentation. You never disappoint. So
Oh,
I
thank
think
you so
there we
much.
go. All right, we'll just give it another second here. While we're waiting, is there anything else you want us to know about this transition?
Oh, I think it really is so tough. It really can be a tough time in life. I equate it a lot um, with starting a family or having a baby. You're supposed to be so happy, and everybody's telling you how happy you're supposed to be and how wonderful everything is. But sometimes it's really, really rough, and it can be hard to admit that to other people and even to ourselves sometimes. That these major life transitions that are supposed to be so happy maybe don't always feel super great while you're going through them. So being kind and gentle to yourself, and taking small steps and doing what you can, I think is really, really important. And for people who really struggle with the disenchantment phase, I really can't recommend counseling highly enough. Just working with someone to work through some of those feelings, um, I think can be super, super helpful.
Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo all of that. This is that came through. How has COVID caused you to change your goals?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, and I think that for people who were retiring right as COVID was starting, or during COVID, I can't even imagine what that transition must have been like. Um, I personally know a lot of people who took an early retirement during COVID for a variety of reasons. Um, I had several coworkers who took an early retirement, in their mid 50s. um, that's really early to suddenly have no schedule. And a lot of people in that if they have that kind of experience will simply go on to another career or to another employer. But it's also can be a good opportunity to kind of evaluate if you do still have 15 or 20 years of working life left. Do you start a second career? Do you start you start a business that you always wanted to start, and maybe now you've had this opportunity to do that and kind of restructure your life. So I think COVID certainly allowed people of all ages to take a lot of chances that maybe they wouldn't have taken otherwise. So I think that's important to think about too, is keeping an eye out for those opportunities that might allow you to make changes and change the direction of your kind of that last third of your working life, or that that full retirement phase. There's a lot of people who don't go right into full retirement. They go into a state of sort of semi-retirement, or they go from uh, one career to a different career that maybe doesn't feel so stressful. So I think COVID gave people the opportunity to reevaluate life.
Yeah, definitely well
That's
put.
a great question.
For sure. I know I've spoken with several people who ended up retiring during the pandemic, and now we're going 100 miles an hour to nothing
Yeah,
and
a lot
looking
of
for,
teachers, a lot of
yeah,
teachers retired during COVID.
yep. And thankfully, those people I spoke with found about it at University Express, and they're doing those classes and other things. So just always a plug for our program. But
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
and honestly, that's something we didn't even get into is about using your talents and using the skills that you acquired and accumulated during your career to stay involved with your field of expertise, and maybe doing something like teaching through University Express, or mentoring, or um, tutoring, and spending time now with people who are going into those fields or who are struggling in those fields. There's a lot of ways to share your career experiences in ways that allow you to still feel involved and fulfilled while being useful. And I think that's a big feeling that people struggle with a lot, is that feeling of suddenly not feeling useful. And we all need to feel that
absolutely. What am I contributing now? What's my purpose? That type of stuff. It's huge.
way.
All right. Well, I'm just seeing more thank yous coming through. So, Jennifer,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And everyone who's on, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And with that, we will stop recording.